Even the children's desperate pleas did nothing to sway the cruel alien soldiers that left the Mizarian family to die slowly, trapped under rubble. But one human couldn't ignore their cries. The noxious air on Mizar Prime stung Darren Stevens' eyes and throat as the battle-hardened soldier picked his way through a leveled city block. Smoke from artillery blasts mixed with concrete dust and the sickly sweet stench of rotting Xeno corpses. Broken glass crunched under his combat boots. Darren's fire team was supposed to search for human survivors in this wasteland, but so far they'd only found aliens, dead or dying. High Command said not to waste time or medical supplies on them, only help humans. As Darren stepped over a fallen light post, a child's scream made him spin around, rifle raised. There, sticking out from under a slab of ferrocrete, was a small grey arm. Blue blood oozed from where the rubble crushed it. "Help, please," the alien child wailed in broken English. "My family, trapped inside." Fuck, Darren thought. Against his training, he rushed over and started digging. The rest of the squad watched from a distance, guns aimed at doorways and holes where hostiles could hide. "Sarge, forget them. We gotta keep moving," his squad leader radioed. "Could be an ambush." Darren lifted a metal sheet, revealing the kid's banged-up but alive Mizarian family. A plan formed in his mind, a stupid, insane plan, but he had to try it. "No, I'm not leaving them," Darren said. "They'll die." "That's an order," Sarge yelled. "Regroup with us now." Darren watched his squad turn their backs and vanish into the smoke. He was alone now, aliens' lives in his hands. One choice to make. Save them or save himself. But Darren knew he'd never be able to live with himself if he let this innocent family perish. He was a soldier, but he was human first, and he'd help those in need, even if it killed him. Now Darren just had to get these hurt aliens to an evac ship, across the raging battlefield. With no backup except his wits and his gun. Easy fucking peasy. With a heavy heart and a sense of duty, Darren turned back to the trapped Mizarian family. He couldn't abandon them, not when they were so close to freedom. The soldier approached the rubble, his hands trembling slightly as he began to shift the debris. "What are your names?" Darren asked, his voice strained with effort as he lifted a heavy slab of concrete. The father, his grey skin marred with cuts and bruises, replied hesitantly, "I am Zathan. This is my mate, Ixara, and our daughter, Nyla." Darren nodded, a small smile forming on his lips despite the dire situation. "I'm Darren. I'm going to get you out of here, okay? Just hold on." Hours passed as Darren worked tirelessly to free the family. The sun began to set, casting an eerie orange glow over the devastated cityscape. Finally, with one last heave, Darren managed to create an opening large enough for the Mizarians to crawl through. Relief washed over their faces as they emerged from the rubble, but it was short-lived. Zathon collapsed to the ground, his injuries too severe for him to stand. Darren knew he needed medical attention, and fast. "The nearest human encampment has supplies," Darren said, his mind racing, "but I don't know if they'll let me bring you there." Ixara looked at him, her eyes pleading. "Please, you must try, for Zathon's sake." Darren nodded, his resolve strengthening. As night fell, he led the family through the deserted streets, his senses on high alert for any sign of danger. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the occasional distant explosion or the scurrying of unseen creatures in the shadows. Suddenly, a group of figures emerged from an alleyway, their silhouettes menacing in the darkness. As they stepped into the dim light of a flickering street lamp, Darren's heart sank. They were Mizarian soldiers, but not like any he had seen before. Their uniforms were tattered, their eyes wild with desperation and anger. "Hand over the traitors," one of the soldiers demanded, his voice harsh and unforgiving. "They collaborated with the humans. They deserve to die." Darren stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "They're innocent, they were trapped, and I'm just trying to get them to safety." The soldiers raised their weapons, their intentions clear. "You have no say in this, human. Step aside or die with them." In that moment, Darren knew what he had to do. He pushed the family behind him, shielding them with his body as he drew his own weapon. "I can't let you hurt them," he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. The Mizarian soldiers advanced, their eyes gleaming with malice. Darren's finger hovered over the trigger, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never wanted to fight against the very people he had sworn to protect, but he knew that sometimes the right choice was the hardest one. The barrel of a gun glinted in the darkness, and a shot cracked through the air. One of the rogue Mizarian soldiers crumpled to the ground, blue blood pooling beneath him. Darren spun around, his heart pounding to see Captain Reeves stepping out from the shadows, the rest of the squad fanning out behind him. "Stand down," Reeves ordered, his voice low and dangerous. "Hand over the traitors and we'll let you walk away." The Mizarian soldiers hesitated, their eyes darting between Reeves and the family. "They must face justice," one of them growled. "It is our way." Reeves took a step forward, his weapon trained on the soldier. "We can take them into custody. They'll be treated fairly under human law." The soldier sneered. "Human law means nothing to us. They will come with us or they will die." Tension crackled in the air as the two sides faced off, weapons drawn. The family huddled behind Darren, Nyla whimpering softly. Seconds stretched into eternity as Reeves and the Mizarian leader stared each other down, neither willing to back down. Suddenly the ground heaved beneath their feet, and a deafening boom rent the air. Buildings swayed and crumbled, raining debris down on the streets. Darren stumbled, nearly losing his footing, as the world tilted crazily around him. In the chaos, he saw his chance. Grabbing Ixara's hand, he pulled the family away from the soldiers, ducking into a narrow alley. Behind them, he heard Reeves shouting orders, followed by the staccato burst of gunfire. They ran, their lungs burning with each breath of dust-choked air. The city was coming apart at the seams, buildings collapsing like houses of cards. Darren led the family through the labyrinth of streets, dodging falling masonry and leaping over piles of rubble. But as they rounded a corner, they skidded to a halt. Before them, the road had split open, a yawning chasm stretching as far as the eye could see. Darren looked back the way they had come, but the path was blocked by a wall of flames and twisted metal. They were trapped, with nowhere to go but forward. Darren turned to the family, his eyes grim. "We have to cross," he said. "It's the only way." Zethon shook his head, his face etched with pain and fear. "We'll never make it," he whispered. Darren gripped the alien's shoulder, looking him square in the eye. "We will," he said, his voice fierce with determination. "I'll get you out of here, I swear it." As they picked their way across the treacherous terrain, the ground shifting and buckling beneath their feet, Darren couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this war than he had been told. The desperation in the Mizarian soldiers' eyes, the way they had been willing to kill their own kind, something didn't add up. But he pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. He had made a promise and he intended to keep it no matter the cost. As they delved deeper into the ruined city, however, Darren began to realize that the price of that promise might be higher than he ever could have imagined. The sharp crack of distant explosions faded into an eerie silence as Darren and his battered squad reached the city limits. Captain Reeves took point, his rifle held at the ready, scanning the abandoned buildings for any sign of danger. Behind him, Darren and the others formed a protective circle around the Mizarian family, their footsteps echoing in the empty streets. An abandoned warehouse loomed ahead, its rusted metal walls offering a promise of temporary safety. Reeves motioned for the group to enter, his eyes never leaving the shadows. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of dust and decay. The squad spread out, securing the perimeter as Darren helped Zathan to a makeshift cot. As Reeves kept watch at the entrance, Darren and the others searched the warehouse for supplies. Dusty crates and old machinery littered the floor, remnants of a time before the war had ravaged the planet. In a hidden room, tucked away behind a stack of mouldy pallets, they discovered a cache of classified documents. Darren's eyes widened as he scanned the files, his heart sinking with each passing second. The documents revealed the truth behind the war, a sinister plot orchestrated by a powerful corporation in league with corrupt officials on both sides. They had manipulated the conflict, fueling the flames of hatred and fear, all to seize control of Mizar Prime's valuable resources. The Mizarian family huddled together, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and anger. Darren realized that their knowledge of this conspiracy was what had made them a target, the reason the rogue soldiers had been so desperate to silence them. As the squad gathered around, discussing their next move, a chilling sound echoed through the warehouse, the clicking of insectoid legs, a chittering that sent shivers down Darren's spine. The group froze, their eyes wide with horror as they realized they were not alone. A swarm of genetically engineered bioweapons, known as harvesters, poured into the warehouse from every angle. Their monstrous forms scuttled across the walls and ceiling, their mandibles dripping with a viscous green liquid. Darren and his squad opened fire, the deafening roar of their weapons filling the air. But the harvesters kept coming, their armored exoskeletons deflecting the bullets like raindrops. One by one, Darren's teammates fell, their screams of agony cut short as the creatures tore into their flesh. The floor grew slick with blood, and the acrid stench of death filled the air. In a last desperate attempt to save the Mizarian family, Darren led them to the roof. A rusted maintenance ladder offered a precarious escape route, but the harvesters were close behind. Their chittering grew louder, the sound of their insectoid legs scraping against the metal stairs. As they reached the top, Darren turned to face the monsters, his rifle raised. The harvesters surged forward, their mandibles dripping with the blood of his fallen comrades. In that moment, Darren knew he had to make a terrible choice. He could sacrifice himself, buying the family the precious seconds they needed to escape, or he could risk all their lives, gambling on a chance at survival. The weight of the decision bore down on him, his heart pounding in his chest. The harvesters closed in, their eyes glinting with a hunger that knew no bounds. Darren's finger tightened on the trigger, his mind racing. Time seemed to slow, each heartbeat an eternity as he faced the oncoming horde. Time slowed, seconds stretching into an eternity as Darren faced the oncoming harvester swarm. His heart pounded, a war drum echoing in his ears. They chittered and screeched, a discordant symphony of death, their armored exoskeletons glistening with the blood of his fallen comrades. Darren's eyes met Murlock's, a silent understanding passing between them. The young Mizarian's face was streaked with tears, his body trembling with fear and grief. But beneath the terror, Darren saw a flicker of hope, a desperate plea for a chance at life. In that moment, Darren knew what he had to do. He grabbed Murlock's shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "Take your family and go," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos raging around them. "I'll hold them off." Murlock shook his head, his words choked with emotion. "No, we can't leave you. We'll fight together." But Darren was already pressing the classified documents into Murlock's hands, his eyes fierce with determination. "You have to get these to safety. The truth must be told." Murlock hesitated, torn between loyalty and the desperate need to protect his family. Darren gave him a gentle push towards the ladder, his voice softening. "Go. Live. For me." With a final anguished look, Murlock turned and began to climb, his family following close behind. Darren watched them go, a sense of peace settling over him. He had made his choice, and he would see it through to the end. As the last of the Mizarians disappeared over the edge of the roof, Darren turned to face the harvesters. They surged forward, a tidal wave of chitinous bodies and snapping mandibles. Darren raised his rifle, his finger tightening on the trigger. He fought with a fury born of desperation, each shot finding its mark. Harvesters fell, their bodies twitching and writhing in pools of viscous green blood. But for every one that fell, 2 more took its place, an endless tide of horror and death. Darren's ammunition ran low, the click of an empty chamber a death knell in the night. He tossed the rifle aside, drawing his combat knife from its sheath. The harvesters closed in, their insectoid eyes glinting with a hunger that knew no bounds. He met them head-on, his blade flashing in the darkness. He slashed and stabbed, his movements a blur of desperate precision. But the harvesters were too many, their armored bodies impervious to his attacks. They swarmed over him, their mandibles tearing at his flesh. Darren screamed, his voice raw with agony, as he felt his life slipping away. But even as the darkness closed in, he clung to the knowledge that he had saved the Mizarian family, that his sacrifice had not been in vain. As the harvesters consumed him, Darren's last thoughts were of Murloc and his family, of the truth they carried with them. He had given them a chance at a future, a hope for a better tomorrow. And in that final, fleeting moment, he knew that he had found his true purpose, his reason for being. Months passed, the war-torn landscape of Mizar Prime slowly beginning to heal. In a remote settlement, far from the prying eyes of the corporation and the remnants of the Mizarian military, Murloc and his family had found a measure of peace. They shared their story with a select few trusted allies who had also seen the horrors of the war firsthand. Together, they worked to piece together the truth, to build a case against the corrupt powers that had orchestrated the conflict. But even as they planned and plotted, the weight of Darren's sacrifice hung heavy on their hearts. Murloc often found himself standing at the edge of the settlement, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon, a small makeshift memorial clutched in his hands. The war had left scars, both physical and emotional. The Mizarian family knew that they would never be truly safe until the corporation was brought to justice, until the truth was revealed to the galaxy at large. But they also knew that they owed it to Darren to keep fighting, to honor his memory by never giving up. And so as Murloc stepped back inside the settlement, his eyes haunted but determined, he made a silent vow. He would face whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers threatened to overcome them. He would fight for the truth, for justice, and for the memory of the human who had given everything to save them. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.